What's up, guys? So we're gonna go over the brain today. So we have the cerebrum, which is gonna be the brain part, gonna be the outer part, and we have the left and right hemispheres of the cerebrum. The gyri are gonna be, first it's easy to say the sulcus. The sulci are these little indentions right here. All the little indentions into the brain are sulci, and then the most raised kind of portions of the brain are going to be your gyri. So then we have your longitudinal fissure, which is the long one that goes right down the center of the brain. That's your longitudinal fissure. Then you have
a few moments later.
Oh! You cut that out. It's okay. Alright, so you're gonna have your frontal lobe, which is obviously gonna be in the front. You have your parietal lobe, which is on the sides right here. This kind of would be your parietal lobe. On this side right here, everything kind of front of this is gonna be your frontal lobe. It's gonna be your parietal lobes on the side, just like remember your bone anatomy on your head. Your brain's gonna kind of follow that. So then one of the first things you're gonna look at on the brain is you're gonna try to find the central sulcus. So the central sulcus is kind of what divides the different lobes, divides your parietal from your frontal, and you get your pre and post central gyrus. So this one right here that goes all the way to the middle is gonna be your central sulcus. Goes all the way down, central sulcus. Right in front of it is gonna be your pre-central gyrus, and right posterior to it is going to be your post-central gyrus. It's going to be this one right here. Remember, pre-central gyrus, post-central gyrus right here. And this is going to be our parietal lobe. So then you're going to have your lateral sulcus, which is on the side. And this one right here is your temporal lobe. So it separates your temporal lobe from your parietal lobe right here. Temporal lobe, lateral sulcus, and then you're going to move to the back right here, and you're going to have your insula, which is like a fifth lobe, which is kind of underneath here. This part right here is going to kind of be your insula on the inside. It's called the fifth lobe, quote unquote, of the brain. It's going to be on the most deep lobe of your brain. You can't really see it from the outside. So let me put this back on right here. We've done those, the lobes. So now we're going to go to your cerebellum. Oh, we didn't do your occipital lobe. Your occipital lobe is going to be in your back right here. This is the lobe that is vision. That's why if you hit the back of your head super hard, you're going to have vision problems. And the posterior part of your brain right here is going to be your occipital lobe, and your Parieto-Occipital Sulcus is going to be kind of right here in the back, kind of a line across the back. It's kind of hard to see in this brain. Sulcuses are kind of the tough part of the brain of figuring out which one's which. So this is going to be your Parieto-Occipital Sulcus right here in the back of the brain. And then, yeah, this is obviously going to be your occipital lobe. So then we have the cerebellum, which is going to be this big thing right here. It has two lobes. This one kind of sits like this. So this is going to be your cerebellum. And then you have your brainstem, which is this part right here. This part's your whole thing is your brainstem. And then if we move on to kind of the midbrain of the head, we're gonna go over the kind of different parts in the mid-sagittal view of the head. So you have your corpus callosum, which is this big thing right here, corpus callosum. Then you have your fornix, which is this right here with this little 6 on it right here. This part's going to be your fornix. Then you have your lateral ventricle, which is this part right here. This is going to be your lateral ventricle. Then you have your thalamus, which is going to be this part right here with this little bump. This little bump's called the intermediate mass, or the interthalamic adhesion, if you want to be fancy and bougie about it. But this whole thing right here is called the thalamus. And then this little indention kind of right here, like kind of going off the thalamus, this is going to be your hypothalamus. And this little kind of tube sort of thing is going to be your infundibulum, which leads to your pituitary gland. And then this part right here is your optic chiasma. So this is where some of your optic nerves are kind of springing over here. And then your mammillary body is going to be this right here. So, yeah, that's it for that one. So, no, it's not it. So, your pineal gland is going to be on the posterior region of the brain. So your pineal gland is going to be right here. And then when we're talking about the brainstem, we're talking about kind of this portion of the brain. This part right here is going to be the midbrain right here. This is going to be your pons. And then this part is going to be your medulla oblongata. We can kind of show you on here one of these ones too. So this one right here is going to be your midbrain. This is going to be your pons. And then this part right here, you can kind of see from this side, is going to be your medulla oblongata, pons, midbrain. So your cerebral spinal fluid flows through different areas of your brain. So right here on these two, you have your lateral ventricles, which you can also see right here. And they're separated. The reason why these aren't together, they're separated by the septum pellucidum, which is right here. It's not really on your list, but it kind of helps you understand kind of why they're separated and stuff like that. So these are your lateral ventricles, and then they enter the third ventricle right here via your interventricular foramen, which is going to kind of be like right here, in here, this area. And this is going to be your intermediate mass or your interthalamic adhesion, like we talked about. It's going to be right here. It's kind of like the duck's eye we talk about, this part right here. So that's why there's a little hole there. You can get confused like me, and you might want to call this the interventricular foramen, but it does not. So this whole thing is the third ventricle, and then after the third ventricle, it goes through the Cerebral Aqueduct, which is right here. And then it goes to your fourth ventricle, which is right at the cerebellum, right here. It's your fourth ventricle. And then it's going to go up here into your superior sagittal sinus, which is going to kind of be up here, this area. So if you want to kind of trace it on here again, this is going to be your lateral ventricle right here. It's going to go into the third ventricle, which is right here, kind of the duck's head we call it. Then it's going to go into this one's a little bit better. It's going to go from the third ventricle down right here. The cerebral aqueduct is right here, and it's going to go into this one, which is the fourth ventricle, right at the cerebellum, and then it's going to kind of go around to the superior sagittal sinus, which is going to be kind of up here. Yep.
What are these white things?
So these white things right here are going to be your Arbor Vitae, and you also have the vermis, which is the vermis is going to be like this little center. It's called like a worm. It's a little center in between the two lobes of the cerebellum is going to be your vermis. That's it, guys.